go ahead and get started. So about me, I presented before. I've seen a lot of y'all in here that I know already, or that we've talked on here already. So I'm not gonna be long here, but I got my real estate license in 2010 in Dallas, Texas. Moved back home to Louisiana in 2016. Got my broker license in 2019. Opened up a brokerage in 2020. So I currently do that full time. It's 17 of us. We operate in the Southeast Louisiana market. So, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, those two markets. I graduated from undergrad at LSU, got my MBA from University of North Texas. That's in the Dallas area. And when it comes to investment, I'm a buy and hold investor. That's my specialty. That's what I love. So that's what if I had to choose one, it's gonna be that one all day. I also do private money lending. I lend money strictly from my self-directed IRA. Sometimes, depending on the deal, I do a little arbitrage where I may take money from my HELOC and make a loan out of it. If you want to follow me, that's my preferred platform of choice. Instagram, LA is the name, and YouTube. I'm starting to get a little more active in YouTube. I'm about to build that out, but it's the same name, Cousin Sales LA. If you're interested in doing business down here from an investment standpoint, that's the website. That's the company website. You can check it out. But yeah, prices are really affordable here, as opposed to, like, I'm sure a lot of you on East Coast, you could afford way more property here. So if you consider investing down here, I am your guy for that. I got the resources. So tonight's objective is just to show you that there's way more to an appraisal than the appraiser's opinion on the price. Let me see. Okay, so yeah, that's the objective. I'm gonna cover it in detail, right? So before we do that, I want to establish a baseline. As I know on the call, we got people on different ends of the spectrum. We may have some experts here, we may have some beginners. So I want to establish that baseline and basically cover the definition of an appraisal. So this is according to Investopedia. It's a valuation of property by the estimate of an authorized person. The authorized appraiser must have a designation from a regulatory body governing the jurisdiction of the appraiser. Appraisals are typically used to determine a possible selling price for a property. So each state is going to be different. I know here in Louisiana, we have the Louisiana Real Estate Appraisers Board. That's the state government agency that administers and regulates the real estate appraisers licensing and certification program. I'm sure it's going to be different at every state is going to have their own independent body that the appraisers report to and get their certifications or licenses through. So when it comes to appraisals, there are three different approaches to value. When an appraiser is hired, they have to go through these three approaches to value. They have to consider all three of them. They're only going to rely on one in that final reconciliation part of the appraisal, but they absolutely have to consider all three and explain why they didn't if one of them was not chosen. So for instance, I'm going to cover the three in a second, but if they do two out of the three and they have to explain why the third one was not considered. That's a USPAP requirement. USPAP, USPAP, Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice. That's like the law or the thing that they go by. All appraisers, all licensed appraisers. So they have to use all three approaches. They have to at least consider all three approaches. All right, cool. So the comparable sales approach. This is the most common one that you're going to see in residential real estate deals. That's when you hear people talking about the comps. That's the comparable sales approach. The income approach. Hold on, let me go back. Comparable sales approach, it also may be known as the sales comparable approach or the sales comparison approach, same thing. All right, so when we talk an income approach, this is going to be most common on commercial real estate deals. For example, like apartments. Apartment complexes, their value, so the market value of the property is going to be based on the income that the property generates. That's why it's important when you see like these investors that come in and buy apartments, they want to buy some that needs work where they can get in there, fix up the property and raise the rents. Because when they raise the rents, what is happening is they're raising the value of the property. Because the income approach, which I'll go into an example in a second, but the income approach is strictly based on the income that the property generates. And if y'all have any questions, just go ahead and jump in, because I ain't gonna lie, I can't even see everybody. So if you got a question, just go ahead and stop me. And then the cost approach, that's the third one. That's not as commonly relied on as the first two, but I mean, I've seen it used to value properties that don't trade often to generate comps on. For instance, like a church. A church, you're not going to see a lot of comparable churches, comparable sales for churches, or a church doesn't generate income per se. You're not renting it out. So that's when the appraiser is going to rely on the cost approach. How much does it cost to build this property? All right. So let's go into detail on all three real quick. So the first one, the comparable sales approach. It's the value of the subject property is equal to the sales price of comparable properties plus or minus any adjustments. This adjustments part is the most important piece here. And I'll show you an example. I took some screenshots from various appraisals and I'll cover it in detail in a second. And like I said, it's used mostly in residential sales. Hold on one second. Let me turn this heat up. It's off because it's hot as shit up in my house right now. My bad. Oh yeah, it's unacceptable. All right, I'm back. My bad. So with the comparable sales approach, homes that are basically in close proximity to the subject property are going to hold a similar value. That's basically how it works. So for instance, if I have a home in a subdivision, I'm probably going to start looking at comps in that subdivision because they're going to be most similar to that house that I'm looking at when I'm doing my comps for putting in the offer purposes or when I want to list a house. But like I said, the key here is the adjustment. So I'm going to show you an example real quick. This is a screenshot of an appraisal of a property I bought last year. This was a new construction home I bought. And something I want to show you specifically on here is this is my property, this new construction. There's a new development neighborhood. These three were the comps that the appraiser used. All right, so something that the appraisers, something they do is they adjust the comps. You never adjust the subject. And what I mean by that is the appraiser is going to look at the differences between the main property, whatever the subject property is. In this case, the house that I was buying, and they're going to look at the comps of homes similar to that one, in the area. They're going to start in the subdivision. If you don't have anything in the subdivision, then you want to go out radius wise. I typically, my bad, it's hot. I typically like to do I do like a half of my radius, well, a quarter of my radius, half, a whole, and then the farthest I go out is 2 miles. However, in talking to an appraiser, they said there's no limit on how far you can go out. You just have to, make your numbers work, whatever that means. Anyway, I say all that to say comparable sales. So what you see here is they go through and they list the subject property, which is the property that was being purchased. Then they list the similarities. I wouldn't worry too much about this front stuff. Quality of construction, I'm guessing that's a code Q3. I don't know what that means. I'm guessing it might be new construction. I don't know. Actual age, 0. All this is 0 because all these were new. Condition C1, that's another code. I'm sure there was some kind of template or something in here, a guide. I didn't look for it. But the main thing here is you see mine is 1345 square feet. This one was bigger. This one was bigger. This one was smaller. So as you see, they adjusted the price. They took the sales price, which is $173,740. All these are the prices that these homes sold at. And they adjusted them downward because if it's bigger, you want to adjust it downward because you're trying to get these comps to get as similar as possible to the subject property. So this one's bigger, so they adjusted it by $2,700. This one by $8,400. This one they marked it up because mine was bigger, so you want to adjust it. Don't get too focused on this. The main part I want to show you here is that every appraiser is going to be different. Like appraising property is an art, it is not a science. So each appraiser is going to go through and adjust things differently. There is no standard criteria for adjustments. So you see, I did the math. I think it was like $55 per square foot. When I did the math, basically the difference between $1,394 and $1,345 was like 49 square feet. And then I divided that into 2,700. It was like 55 or something like that. So essentially he's saying that he or she, I don't remember if it was a female or lady, female or man, they're saying that for every square foot difference, it was $55 for whatever reason. I can guarantee you every appraiser is going to be different here. There's no set rule on you have to adjust it by this amount. So anyway, when you see it here at the bottom, 2,700 minus 2,700, so that's how you get to the 171, 174.5, and then 180. So essentially they took the sales price and then they made the adjustment, and then that's the final number here. So the sales comparison approach, basically they're going to say my property is worth somewhere between 171 and 180 in this instance. And I'll show you what it was. In addition to that, though, in addition to these comps that they do for the comparable sales approach, they're also going to have like a little blurb right after that. Right after those numbers I just showed you, they're going to have like a little analysis here where they talk about why they chose the comps they did and what they think to be the best one is, yada yada. And then you see the indicated value by sales comparison approach, 175. So that's one approach, right? So that's how they do it. That's the comparable sales approach, and that's the ones mostly used for residential. All right, so when it comes to the income approach, it quantifies the present worth of future benefits associated with the ownership of the real estate asset. Like I said earlier, it's used in large multifamily and commercial deals based on the current income of the property that is receiving. So you'll see it either two ways here. This first one is a screenshot from an appraisal. I want to say it might have been the same property. No, it was a different one. It was a duplex actually that I sold. So you see here they used the gross rent multiplier. So essentially they took whatever the gross monthly rent is times that gross rent multiplier, and that's how they got the value in this individual case. So it can either be expressed as a factor of a gross rent multiplier, or it can be expressed as a factor of an NOI. NOI is the net operating income. This right here, you're probably going to see this more when you have the large multifamily, like 5 units or greater. This right here, you're probably going to see 2, 3, and 4 units. All right. The gross rent multiplier is basically just an easy calculation to determine, the value of a property based on the profitability of similar properties. And the way you get that is you just take the property price or the value divided by the gross rental income. And that's how you get that number right there. But the appraiser is already going to have that. So they're going to multiply whatever number they already have. And that's how they get the value for the income approach. In this case, this is a duplex right here. But this right here is important for apartments. Cool. All right, cost approach. So it's the cost to acquire the land plus the cost of any improvements minus any accrued depreciation. So the underlying premise of the cost approach is that a potential user of real estate won't or shouldn't pay more for a property than it will cost to build an equivalent. So basically, how much would it cost to build this exact same structure today? I shouldn't be paying $150 to build something that'll only cost, $100,000, right? I shouldn't be paying $150,000 to buy something that will only cost $100,000 to build. So that's the cost approach. As you will see it expressed in the appraisal, it looks something like this, where it shows you, how much square feet dwelling. This is the same property from earlier, mine, 1345 square feet. Now, where they get this number from, 8971, it says here, source of cost data, Marshall Swift. I'm assuming that's some kind of book or some kind of data source that they all have access to. And that's how they basically go through the garage, the dwelling, and that's how they get the cost approach. All right, cool. So what I want to show you now is the reconciliation. So they take all three of those approaches. They got the sales. This is on every single appraisal. They take that sales approach, which is 175, the cost, which is 176.9. And remember, I said they need to consider all three. So they didn't do the income approach. All right. But what happens is, I'll show you in a second. In this case, they went with the comparable sales approach because it's a single family residential. So that's why they went with this one. That's the value they gave it as of June 3rd of last year. So they didn't consider the income approach. But remember, I said, according to USPAP, they have to explain their reasoning why. So I'll show you where that would be in a second, but this is very, very important. All right, so right here on this part, on the reconciliation part, you see this appraisal is made as is. They have 4 boxes. As is. The next one, subject to completion of repairs and specifications, yada, yada, yada. All that's basically saying is subject to repairs. I'm sorry, this would be new construction. If you're saying you're gonna make modifications or you're building something new, you'll see this box checked. These next two is when they have issues. And I have an example with some issues. I'll show you how that works. But right after the reconciliation, additional comments, remember I told you they would have to explain. So this right here is where they explain, therefore, the income approach was not considered applicable in this analysis, yada, yada, yada. So they explain why they didn't use that. But like I said, they have to consider all three. If they don't, then they have to explain it, which is here. So that's compliant with USPAP. All right. So remember I told you about the subject to box when we had problems. So whenever you see something that has problems, you'll have a box like this checked. Subject to the following required inspection based on yada, yada, yada. So in this particular case, this was a triplex I sold back in 2019. Well, actually, we closed in 2020, January 2020. But the appraisal went out early December, and they had some issues subject to repairs. So whenever you see subject to repairs, that means they have to come back out. The appraiser has to come back out and do a reinspection of those items that they initially flagged, right? So let me show you what that would come up at. So it will be the additional comment section, which is right after the reconciliation. So in this particular case, I know it's small on the screen, but in this particular case, you see here, it talked about issues, spongy flooring, recent foundation repairs, existing termite damage, sealing of front doors, exposed wiring in the attic near the water heater, low water pressure, absence of hot water in 2 of the units. I took the street out, but anyway, for confidentiality purposes. But anyway, this is important because if the appraiser ever flags you, this is where you will find why they flagged it. So and then it will be upon the seller to go back and repair these issues, for the appraiser to come back out and re-inspect them. When it comes to FHA, this one was an FHA loan. They're like real particular when it comes to FHA loans. There's specific items that the property must have or they will be flagged, like, or they must not have. So for instance, like paint, like chipping paint, they're gonna flag it for chipping paint. I got like a little document, 30 ways your home won't qualify for FHA financing. If there's bars on the windows, like burglar bars, you got to take them down before an appraiser comes out because they're going to flag it. And what they're going to say is basically, this is an issue, it needs to be removed. So what you do in that case, you just remove them, have the appraiser come back out there, look at them, and then put them back on after, if you want to, put them back on after you close. But the appraiser is going to notify or put a flag there for subject to reinspection. Another thing would be like stairs when they don't have a banister. They're going to flag that. You got to put a banister up. So I got a document, if y'all interested in that document, on 30 ways that your home won't qualify for FHA financing. So to recap, in the reconciliation section, it just says which approaches were considered or not and why, in the additional comments here. So with that being said, we have realtor comps. Any questions before we move on? All right. So we have realtors comps and we have the appraisers comps. So I want to discuss the difference between what a realtor is looking at and what an appraiser is viewing when doing comps. All right. So whenever I'm doing comps, I'm speaking right now. So I'm a realtor, I'm speaking. So I'm looking at 6 months in the past, plus I know what's currently happening. So I'm looking forward into the future. So it's sort of like forecasting based on where we want to see the market heading, right? So if I know that the market is slowing down significantly, like right now, I'm probably not going to rely on homes that sold 5-6 months ago, because that's not what's happening today. So I'm kind of looking forward into the future when I'm doing my comps to help better judge, what the property is worth, as opposed to the appraiser. They're only looking at facts. So and they have to, use those last 6 months. They have to use that data in their report. So they're sticking strictly to the numbers based. Although there's a part of the appraisal where they talk about trends and things like that. But when it comes to documenting those comps, they're strictly looking at the past, 6 months in the past. All right, when it comes to the realtors, so any good realtor is going to give you a range to protect themselves and not state a specific number. And I'm speaking for myself here. If we have any other realtors on here, I highly advise you do not give a specific number. And here's why. First of all, you're not a licensed appraiser. You can't give an opinion of value. And if you say my property is worth $200,000, I put it on the market for $200,000 and not selling that $200,000, guess who the seller's going to come at? You're going to have to own up to that number because that's what you told them. So to protect myself when it comes to price and comps, I always say a range. I usually do about $10,000, just depends on the numbers, but I give a $10,000, a range. It's worth from 190 to 200. That way I'm giving myself a little, wiggle room in the event we price it higher, at the higher end at 200, and it's not moving like I thought it would. So you always want to protect yourself there. As opposed to an appraiser, they're going to give, it's worth 200, like a straight opinion of value, is no ranges. They set a specific dollar amount that the property is worth. And then each appraiser is going to be different, by the way. Like if I order 5 appraisals on one property, I'm sure I'll have 5 different amounts. However, they all should be close. Remember, I told you they do different adjustments. It's not a science, it's an art. So they're all gonna have 5 different numbers, guaranteed. But they all should be close though. All right. So other things to look for in an appraisal. So this is the part I was talking about that I'm sure you all probably don't look at all. But in the meantime, let me refill my cup. All right. So other things to look for. Neighborhood trends. So this one right here is from this is actually my property. It's a single family appraisal that was done in June of 2021. So what I want to point out here is there's a lot of stuff in the back of these appraisals. If you look, one, for instance, property values, it tell you if it's increasing, stable, or declining, demand and supply, shortage, imbalance, oversupply, marketing time. If you have to sell it, you know, what they anticipate, what the appraisers anticipate is going to be on the market for, under 3 months, 3 to 6, over 6. So this is good just to kind of look at and kind of know, you know, good information. There's a lot in here, but I'm just pointing out some of the ones that I thought are good. Zoning, this is important, zoning compliance. Legal. So when the appraiser is going to do their appraisal, they're going to look and see what it's zoned for, right? So they're going to tell you if it's zoned, if the property is legally zoned, right? So in this case, it's zoned for residential. It is a residential property, so that's why they check the legal box. Highest and best use, where is it? Right here. Is this the highest and best use of the subject property? This is important because, like in my old job as a bank examiner, I worked for the Farm Credit Administration. And basically what we did was we regulate banks that lend money to farmers. They can only lend money to farmers. So you would, like, this was important to us at that time because, like, you would see banks lending money to people who want to buy land in an area that we know is going to be developed, like for residential purposes. So they'll be buying land like in the middle of a residential area and call it a farm. And that would be a no-no because the highest and best use on here would say, you know, it's highest and best use is residential land, residential subdivision, things like that. So anyway, you shouldn't run into too many of these issues unless you're buying in like rural areas. But highest and best use, that's good to know. Another thing on here is flood zone. So it'll tell you right here, what's the flood zone, X in this case. So that's good. Want to keep that in mind. Another thing when it comes to neighborhood trends, it's the same part of that report. I just had to do 2 screenshots to make it fit on the screen. Like I said, this one from December of 2019. So something I want to point out is property values. It's telling you increasing. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is another one. This is the triplex. Yeah, this is the triplex in New Orleans. It's from December of 2019. Property values increasing. Demand supply. There was a shortage. This was right going into 2020, right before COVID started, when we had properties selling like hotcakes. Marketing time under 3 months. So this is the beginning of that process. Let's see what else. Zoning. This is important. Remember earlier I showed you one that was legally done. This one is legal non-conforming. So this is a triplex, but if you see here, right above it, it's saying it's zoned for RD2. RD2 is a double or duplex. In New Orleans, that's how it's coded. Everybody's going to be, every state jurisdiction, whatever, is going to be different. But this one is a triplex, so it's grandfathered in, even though it's zoned for duplex. So that's what they're saying. But anyway, flood zone X. So it's just good information to know. Definitely should check it out. Let me show you some other stuff that's in the back of the appraisal. Also, I can't see no questions, by the way. So if y'all want to stop me. If not, we'll just wait to the end. And I don't have that much left. Improvements. It's the improvement section. So it talks about on here. Here's basically what an appraiser will have to describe if there were any improvements done to the property. It's very, very, very important to make sure that the appraiser is aware of any improvements you made to the property before doing the appraisal. So like if you're selling a house and you did improvements, you want to make sure your realtor knows those improvements. So that way your realtor can put them in the MLS and also provide a list to the appraiser before they come out or when they come out. I've seen some people who, like, especially when you're doing flips and stuff, you want to probably print out everything you did and lay it on the kitchen table or the counter so the appraiser can see it. Because remember we talked about those adjustments. You want the appraiser to adjust the property correctly or favorably for you for those improvements. This is the section right here where it just talks about, kitchen was updated less than 1 year ago, bathrooms updated less than 1 year ago. So you want to make sure they know everything about their property so they can give you credit for it. Because remember, those adjustments are subjective. They're so subjective. So if you added granite countertops, you want to make sure you put that in there. Like, make sure you put every improvement. And it's not illegal for the listing agent to talk to the appraiser. Not illegal at all. You want to let them know what you've done to the property so they can give you the proper, value. or what you think it's worth. All right, so another section would be the market research and analysis section. I know it's kind of small probably on your screen, but basically this is just showing trend data on the market looking 12 months back. So this basically helps the end user, basically the person or company providing the financing, because they want to know what they have as collateral. You see over here, got all these trends, right? So they want to know this. That's why they have a QA department that reviews these appraisals when they come in before giving you that approval or not for the loan, because they want to understand fully what they have as collateral. The banks are not in the market of holding property. Like if they have to foreclose, they don't want to foreclose, because when they foreclose, they got to get the utilities cut on in their name. They got to maintain the loan. They got to, you know, like it's just upkeep that's not what they do. They make loans, they make money off interest. They don't want to hold your property. But data like this, stuff like this, that's what they're looking at, that QA department. Not only are they looking at the comps to make sure that, you know, you use valuable, the appraiser use valuable comps, but they're also looking at this kind of stuff, the trends. That's important for them. Another thing I'm sure you've seen is the building sketch. This is very important for realtors. We love it when you have the old appraisal, because we could utilize this sketch instead of measuring the property from scratch. I just go back and I rely on this, because I don't want to start from scratch, because I'll mess up. Chances, put it like this, they do this for a living, I don't. I'd rather rely on what they do as opposed to, you know, me. So that's the building sketch. Obviously, I'm sure y'all probably look through the photos. There's gonna be photos of the property being purchased, obviously, a lot of photos of that. But there's also gonna be front photos of the homes used as comps. This one right here, this is still the property I purchased last year, the new construction. That's why another important part, when realtors are closing out the properties, like once they sell and they closing out the property in the MLS, it's very, very important that they close it out with the correct data. You know, how much it sold for, how much the seller gave in closing costs, any points paid, any concessions, like for repairs, things like that, because the realtor's gonna, the appraiser's gonna use that for comp purposes. You know, what kind of upgrades were in that home, all that factors in. So anyway, photos of the comps. This is another one. This is another property, another appraisal. But as you can see here, more sales comps. But what I want to show you is rental comps. So as you see, you know, rental 1, rental 2. So there's also going to be photos for rental comps in multifamily purposes. So you buying a duplex, they're going to do sales comps. They're also going to do rental comps. All right. So now we're about to get spicy. We're about to get into the good part, the part y'all probably most interested in, rent schedule. When it comes to multifamily only. So a single family property, you're not going to see this in here, in the appraisal period. You're just going to see what I showed you. For when it comes to 2, 3, and 4 families, you're going to see the rent schedule. This is very important, and I'll show you why in a second. But it'll look just like the sales comps, you know, have the columns. I cut it off, obviously, but good information. This was the triplex again. You can see here they use total bedrooms 5, total rooms 5, bedrooms 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So anyway, use these for rental comps for the 2, 1. Then they had let me show you on the next one actually. As you see here, they'll have, I don't know where they get, I guess this is not accurate anyway, just put the date of the appraisal on here for the lease dates, but they put the opinion on there, like this is the very important. So check me out. Somebody posted in the Telegram group this week, actually, it was either this week or last, about the FHA Self-Sufficiency Test. All right, so here's why that's important. Because in the appraisal, when it comes to multifamily property, 2, 3, 4 family, the appraiser, or the lender is gonna, if it's an FHA loan, the lender is gonna apply what's called the FHA Self-Sufficiency Test. What that means is 75% of the total market rent for all of the units have to be more than the total monthly payment. So I guess the reason being is if they had to take the property back, they want to make sure that, you know, the rent that they're getting could cover the monthly payment. I don't know what it is. Let me stop there, because I might be making that up. But the self-sufficiency test is saying that 75% of the total market rent of the units have to be more than whatever your monthly payment is. It doesn't matter what the actual leases are. It matters what the appraisal says. So in this case, you see you got $1,150 for one unit, $1,150, and then $600. So a total of $2,900. Let's say all 3 of these units were leased, and it was actually getting $3,500. Does not matter. They're going to use whatever the appraiser says. So what they will do in this case is they'll take that $2,900, they'll multiply it times 75%, And what that comes out to is $2,175. So what this saying for the FHA self-sufficiency test is that your payment cannot be more than $2,175 a month. Otherwise, you cannot buy this property. Or you could do some things like get creative, like maybe get the seller to buy down points. I'm sorry, help pay down your points, like to make your monthly payment lower. You could put more down as a down payment. You just have to figure out a way to get your monthly payment lower than whatever 75% of the rents that the appraiser put in the appraisal. That's the most important piece. That's the FHA self-sufficiency test. And then just a side note about rent for qualifying purposes. So the lender is going to rely on this number for FHA. And the units can be vacant. Like all three of these units could be vacant. When it comes to qualifying, the lender is going to give you credit for 75% of this number, even if they're vacant units. However, if it's a conventional loan, you have to have actual leases. They're not going to use vacant numbers. Like if the unit vacant, they're not using it. So for conventional FHA, you could use a vacant unit. All right, everybody good? No questions? All right, I think I'm almost done actually. All right, so yeah, rent schedule again. This is a new construction duplex I had actually. It's just saying, what the rents were. So just remember, whenever you have multifamily property, come to this part, the rent schedule, to see what the appraiser is saying that rents for this property could get, because that's important for qualifying purposes, but also for the FHA self-sufficiency test if you get an FHA loan. All right, so in summary, there's way more than appraisal than just the price. And I didn't even go over everything. I just went over the things that I thought was the most important. There's way more stuff in the appraisal, but I just didn't, think was important. So I just went over the big parts. Just remember, like every bank is gonna have a QA department where they're reviewing that appraisal just to make sure that, what they're taking on as collateral is sufficient and they know exactly what they're getting. So with that being said, I want to open it up. I appreciate y'all. Hold on, let me see where's the stop share. Bam. So I want to open it up to questions if y'all have any questions. And I didn't see any chat. I didn't see any of that. So just unmute yourself, raise your hand.